Hey there, how's it going? Thanks for joining me today. Whether you're relaxing at home, on your commute, or winding down for the evening, I'm really glad you're here. Picture this, 100,000 years ago, in the vast emptiness between stars, something extraordinary was happening. Beings whose technology we can barely imagine were surveying our corner of the galaxy, looking at this unremarkable yellow star and its collection of barren, lifeless rocks floating in the void. They had a choice to make, and the choice they made would determine everything, literally everything, about your life, my life, and the existence of every creature that has ever drawn breath on this planet. Before we continue this journey, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story resonates with you. Make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extraordinary for you. Now these builders, and yes, I'm calling them builders because that's exactly what they were. They looked at this solar system and made a decision that defies every probability calculation we've ever run. They chose the third planet from the sun, not Venus, that second rock that would later become a hellish pressure cooker under runaway greenhouse effects. Not Mars, the fourth planet that would freeze into a rusty, wind-swept wasteland. No, they chose precisely the spot where liquid water could exist, where temperatures would remain stable, where life wouldn't just survive, but flourish. Think about that for a second. In all the cosmic real estate available to them, they picked the one location in our solar system, the only location, where what we call the Goldilocks zone exists. Not too hot, not too cold, but just right. And here's the thing that'll blow your mind. They didn't just stumble onto this perfect spot. They engineered it. What I'm about to share with you is the story of the grandest construction project ever attempted. We're talking about building a living world from cosmic dust and raw materials, creating a planet that could sustain not just basic life forms, but consciousness itself. Every single detail had to be perfect, and I mean perfect down to the molecular level. Let's start with something most people never think about: Earth's core. Right now, as you're listening to this, nearly 4,000 miles beneath your feet, there's a ball of molten iron and nickel spinning at temperatures that rival the surface of the sun. We're talking about 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit of liquid metal in constant motion. Now, you might think this is just random geological happenstance, but here's where it gets wild. The builders knew that this core had to have exactly the right iron-to-nickel ratio. Too much iron, and the magnetic field generated would be so strong it would interfere with the delicate biological processes they were planning. Too little, and there wouldn't be enough magnetic protection to shield the surface from deadly solar radiation. They had to hit a target so precise that being off by even a few percentage points would doom any life they placed here, but they nailed it. They created a magnetic dynamo that generates what we call Earth's magnetic field, an invisible shield that deflects charged particles from the sun and prevents our atmosphere from being stripped away into space. Without this protection, Earth would look like Mars does today, a barren, airless rock with no hope of supporting life. Here's what's absolutely incredible about this engineering feat. They didn't just design it to work for a few million years. They programmed it to last for billions of years. The convection currents in that molten core are still running today, exactly as designed, creating the same protective field that has shielded our planet for eons. And this is just the beginning. The core was only the foundation of what they were building. The mass of our planet had to be calibrated with surgical precision. Too massive, and the gravity would crush any complex life forms under their own weight. Too light, and the atmosphere would drift off into space like a balloon losing its air. The builders calculated exactly the right amount of material needed, roughly 6 sextillion tons. If you're keeping track, to create gravitational conditions where future life could not just exist, but thrive, they positioned Earth at exactly the right distance from the sun. We're talking about 93 million miles, a distance that astronomers now call an astronomical unit, because it's become our standard measurement for cosmic distances. Move us just 5% closer, and we'd experience runaway greenhouse heating like Venus, move us 5% farther out, and we'd freeze solid like Mars. The margin for error was essentially zero, and they hit it perfectly. But here's where the story gets even more fascinating. As these builders worked, they weren't just thinking about creating a planet that could support life. They were designing a world that could evolve consciousness, beings who could eventually understand what had been built and maybe even help maintain it. Every system they installed had multiple purposes. Multiple fail-safes, multiple layers of elegant complexity. The atmosphere they crafted maintains exactly 21% oxygen. Now this might sound random, but it's not. 21% is the sweet spot for complex life. At 19%, you couldn't light a fire. At 25%, everything would spontaneously combust. The builders found that narrow window where advanced life could flourish, and they've kept it stable for hundreds of millions of years. The water cycle they designed is a masterpiece of engineering. Water evaporates from oceans, forms clouds, falls as rain, flows through rivers back to the sea, but it's so much more than just H2O moving around. This cycle regulates temperature across the entire planet. It transports nutrients to where life needs them. It carves out landscapes and creates the geographical diversity that drives evolution. They engineered water itself, giving it properties found in no other substance in the universe. It expands when it freezes, making ice float and protecting aquatic life below. It has the perfect heat capacity to moderate temperature changes. It dissolves more substances than any other liquid, making it the ideal medium for biological chemistry. Now I know what you're thinking. This sounds impossible, right? How could anyone, any intelligence, no matter how advanced, orchestrate something this complex? Well, that's exactly what kept scientists puzzled for centuries. But as our technology improved and we could examine our world more closely, the evidence became undeniable. Take plate tectonics, the movement of massive slabs of Earth's crust. For decades, geologists thought this was just random geological activity. But when we mapped it precisely, we discovered these plates move at exactly 2 to 4 inches per year. Not faster, not slower. This rate is perfect for recycling materials from the surface back into the mantle, while keeping the surface stable enough for complex life to develop. Too fast, and continents would be constantly reshuffling, preventing stable ecosystems. Too slow, and carbon wouldn't be recycled efficiently, leading to climate instability. The builders programmed this entire system to run like clockwork, and it's been operating flawlessly for billions of years. But perhaps the most stunning piece of engineering they left us was our moon. Now, most people think of the moon as just Earth's natural satellite, but here's what'll shock you. Our moon is impossibly large for a planet of our size. It's 1/4 the size of Earth, which makes it by far the largest moon relative to its planet in our entire solar system. The odds of capturing a moon this size naturally? Astronomical. The odds of it ending up at exactly the right distance to create perfect tidal forces? Even more astronomical. Yet there it sits, precisely positioned to churn our oceans with tides that would later drive evolution in tidal pools and coastal regions. It stabilizes Earth's axial tilt at 23.5 degrees, giving us predictable seasons without the extreme variations that would make advanced life impossible. Remove the moon, and Earth would wobble chaotically, experiencing climate swings that would wipe out complex ecosystems. The builders placed it there deliberately, as part of their grand design. As I've been researching this story, what strikes me most is the sheer audacity of what they attempted. They were essentially building a machine, the most complex machine ever conceived, that would run autonomously for billions of years, maintaining the perfect conditions for life to not just survive, but to evolve, to develop intelligence, to eventually understand the very systems keeping it alive. And here's the most incredible part. They succeeded beyond any reasonable expectation. Not only did they create a world where life flourished, they created a world where life became conscious, began asking questions, started looking up at the stars and wondering about its place in the universe, but they didn't just build this magnificent world and disappear without a trace. No, they left clues, signatures hidden in plain sight across our planet, waiting for the day when we'd become sophisticated enough to recognize them. Evidence that once seemed like natural wonders, but when examined closely, reveals patterns too precise, too purposeful to be accidental. The story we're about to explore together will take us from ancient monuments that encode mathematical constants to geological formations that follow suspicious patterns. From atmospheric compositions that shouldn't exist to ocean systems that operate with mechanical precision. We'll discover that Earth isn't just a planet that happens to support life. It's a carefully crafted environment designed to nurture consciousness itself. And the most mind-blowing realization: we're living during the exact moment in Earth's history when its automatic systems are beginning to show strain, just as humanity develops the technology and understanding to potentially take over their maintenance. The timing seems too perfect to be coincidental. The builders may have left us the ultimate gift, not just a world to live in, but a world to eventually understand and protect. The question that'll haunt you after hearing this story is simple but profound. Are we ready to accept our inheritance as Earth's next caretakers? Tomorrow, we'll dive deep into the blueprint itself, how they assembled this living machine layer by layer, system by system, creating what we'll discover is the most sophisticated piece of technology in our solar system. Trust me, once you understand how they built the core, the magnetic field, the plate tectonics, and that impossibly perfect moon, you'll never look at our world the same way again. You're not going to believe what they accomplished. And you're definitely not going to believe the clues they left behind for us to find. Hey there, how's it going? Thanks for joining me today. Whether you're relaxing at home, on your commute, or winding down for the evening, I'm really glad you're here. Welcome back to our incredible journey. Yesterday we talked about the moment when the builders arrived and made their choice to construct Earth in exactly the right spot for life. Today, I want to take you inside their workshop and show you how they actually built this living machine, layer by layer, system by system. Before we continue this journey, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story resonates with you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extraordinary for you. Picture yourself watching the universe's most complex construction project unfold. We're talking about engineering on a scale that makes our greatest human achievements look like sandcastles. The builders had to create not just a planet, but a self-sustaining system that would maintain perfect conditions for billions of years without any maintenance or intervention. They started from the inside out, beginning with the most critical component, the core. Now, imagine trying to build a dynamo that has to spin continuously for 4.5 billion years. That's the challenge they faced. Deep beneath what would become Earth's surface, they assembled a sphere of molten iron and nickel, roughly the size of Mars. But here's the incredible part. They didn't just throw these materials together randomly. Every aspect was precisely calculated. The iron-to-nickel ratio had to be exact. Too much iron, and the magnetic field would be so powerful it would interfere with the delicate chemistry of life. Too little, and the field would be too weak to protect against cosmic radiation. They achieved a composition of roughly 80% iron to 20% nickel, a ratio that creates magnetic field strength measured at about 25 to 65 microteslas at Earth's surface. That might sound like technical jargon, but this is the exact field strength needed to deflect solar wind particles while allowing radio waves to pass through for communication. But the real genius lies in how they made it self-sustaining. The core isn't just sitting there. It's a dynamic system with the outer core spinning at a different rate than the inner core. This differential rotation creates what scientists call the geodynamo effect. Convection currents in the liquid outer core generate electrical currents, which in turn produce our magnetic field. It's like a massive electrical generator running continuously at the center of our planet. Here's what blows my mind. They engineered this system to be self-maintaining. As the core slowly cools over geological time, the inner solid core grows larger, releasing latent heat that drives continued convection. It's a feedback loop designed to last for billions of years. And it's still working perfectly today, exactly as programmed, moving outward from the core. They constructed the mantle, that 2,000-mile thick layer of superheated rock that makes up most of Earth's volume. Now, you might think this is just molten rock, but that would be like saying a computer is just silicon and metal. The mantle is a carefully designed system of convection cells that drive everything happening on Earth's surface. The builders programmed specific convection patterns into the mantle. Hot material rises from the core mantle boundary, travels horizontally beneath the crust, then cools and sinks back down. This creates a conveyor belt system that has been running for billions of years, driving plate tectonics with mechanical precision. And let me tell you about plate tectonics. This is engineering brilliance at its finest. The builders didn't create a solid, unchanging crust. Instead, they designed a dynamic system of massive plates that move at exactly the right speed to maintain planetary health. These plates crash together to form mountain ranges, pull apart to create new ocean floor, and slide past each other in transform boundaries. The speed is critical, 2 to 4 inches per year. Fast enough to recycle carbon through the rock cycle, preventing runaway greenhouse effects. Fast enough to bring fresh minerals to the surface for life to use, but slow enough that surface conditions remain stable for millions of years at a time, allowing complex ecosystems to develop. Think about what this means. The builders had to calculate the exact viscosity of mantle rock, the precise temperature gradients, the specific density differences that would create convection at just the right speed. Too fast, and continents would be constantly reshuffling, making stable life impossible. Too slow, and the carbon cycle would break down, leading to either a frozen planet or a runaway greenhouse. They nailed it perfectly. But here's where the construction gets even more sophisticated. The crust itself isn't uniform. It's precisely engineered with 2 different types. Oceanic crust, made primarily of dense basalt, averages about 4 miles thick. Continental crust, composed of lighter granite-type rocks, averages about 22 miles thick, but can reach up to 43 miles under mountain ranges. This density difference is crucial. The heavier oceanic crust subducts beneath the lighter continental crust at convergent boundaries, driving the recycling process that maintains atmospheric composition. It's like they designed a planetary-scale recycling system that sorts materials by density and processes them accordingly. The volcanic activity generated by this system isn't random either. Volcanoes are strategically positioned along plate boundaries and over mantle hotspots to regulate atmospheric composition. They release carbon dioxide when the planet needs warming, and the weathering of volcanic rocks removes CO2 when cooling is needed. It's a thermostat system operating on geological timescales. Now let's talk about their masterpiece, the moon. When I researched this part of the story, I had to check the numbers 3 times because they seemed impossible. Our moon is 1/4 the size of Earth. To put that in perspective, if Earth were a basketball, the moon would be a tennis ball. This makes it by far the largest moon relative to its planet in our solar system. Jupiter's largest moon, Ganymede, is only about 4% of Jupiter's diameter. Saturn's largest moon, Titan, is about 4% of Saturn's diameter. But our moon, 27% of Earth's diameter. The probability of naturally capturing a moon this large and positioning it at exactly the right distance is so small that it's essentially impossible. Yet there it sits, performing multiple critical functions that make complex life possible. First, it creates tides. Not just any tides, but tides with exactly the right amplitude to drive evolution without being destructive. The gravitational pull creates tidal ranges that average about 3 feet globally, with some coastal areas experiencing ranges up to 50 feet. This tidal action churns nutrients in coastal waters, creates tidal pools where early life could evolve, and provides energy that early organisms learned to harness. But the moon does something even more critical. It stabilizes Earth's axial tilt. Without the moon, Earth would wobble chaotically as it orbits the sun. Computer models show that without lunar stabilization, Earth's tilt could vary from 0 to 85 degrees over periods of millions of years. This would create climate extremes that would prevent complex life from developing. Instead, the moon locks our tilt at 23.5 degrees, giving us predictable seasons that drive atmospheric circulation patterns, ocean currents, and the climate. Stability that allowed civilizations to develop agriculture and plan for the future. The builders positioned the moon at exactly the right distance, currently about 239,000 miles away, to create these effects. Closer, and tidal forces would be destructive. Further, and the stabilizing effect would be too weak. They hit the target perfectly. Here's something that'll make you think. The moon is slowly moving away from Earth at about 1.5 inches per year. This means that in the distant past, it was closer and tidal effects were stronger. But the builders calibrated this recession rate so that tidal forces were strongest during the early periods when life was evolving, then gradually weakened as complex life developed and needed more stable conditions. It's like they programmed a gradual transition from dynamic conditions that drive evolution to stable conditions that allow complex ecosystems to flourish. The atmospheric composition they designed is another marvel of engineering. 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen, with trace amounts of argon, carbon dioxide, and other gases. This isn't arbitrary. Each component serves specific purposes. Oxygen at 21% is the sweet spot for complex life. Below 19%, and combustion becomes difficult. You couldn't maintain fire for cooking or metallurgy. Above 25%, and organic materials become so flammable that forest fires would be unstoppable. Lightning strikes would ignite everything, and complex ecosystems couldn't survive. Nitrogen serves as a buffer gas, diluting oxygen to safe levels while remaining chemically inert under normal conditions. It also provides a reservoir for biological nitrogen fixation, allowing life to access this essential element for proteins and DNA. Trace amount of carbon dioxide, currently about 400 parts per million, is perfectly calibrated to maintain greenhouse warming that keeps Earth from freezing while not being so concentrated that it creates runaway heating. The builders designed multiple feedback mechanisms to maintain this balance automatically. When CO2 levels rise, more carbonic acid forms in rainwater, which weathers rocks faster, consuming CO2. When levels drop, reduced weathering allows volcanic emissions to gradually increase atmospheric concentration. It's a self-regulating system that has maintained habitable temperatures for billions of years. But here's what really convinced me that this is all artificial: the water cycle. Water covers exactly 71% of Earth's surface. Not 70%, not 72%, but 71%. This precise coverage is essential for climate regulation. Too much water, and there would be no land for terrestrial evolution. Too little, and oceans couldn't effectively moderate global temperatures. The builders calculated exactly how much water was needed and placed it accordingly. And water itself. This substance has properties that shouldn't exist. It's one of only a few materials that expands when it freezes, making ice less dense than liquid water. This means ice floats, insulating aquatic life during cold periods instead of sinking and allowing bodies of water to freeze solid from bottom to top. Water has the highest specific heat capacity of any common substance, except ammonia. This means it resists temperature changes, making it perfect for biological systems and climate regulation. It's also an almost universal solvent, dissolving more substances than any other liquid, making it ideal for biological chemistry and nutrient transport. The builders didn't just place water on Earth. They engineered the molecular properties of water itself to be perfect for life. As I studied all these systems, I kept coming back to one overwhelming realization. Every component is precisely calibrated to work with every other component. The core generates the magnetic field that protects the atmosphere. The mantle drives plate tectonics that regulates atmospheric composition. The moon stabilizes climate and drives tidal evolution. The atmosphere maintains perfect conditions for liquid water. The water cycle distributes energy and materials globally. It's not just a planet, it's a machine. The most sophisticated machine ever built, designed to maintain perfect conditions for life, while gradually transitioning through different phases as that life evolves from simple to complex. Tomorrow, we're going to explore something that'll really shake your worldview. The builders didn't just construct Earth and disappear. They left signatures, calling cards hidden in plain sight across our planet. Ancient monuments that encode impossible mathematical knowledge. Geological formations that follow suspicious patterns. Evidence that once seemed like natural wonders, but when examined closely, reveals the fingerprints of intelligence. Trust me, once you see these hidden signatures, you'll realize the builders wanted us to figure this out. They were waiting for the day when we'd become sophisticated enough to recognize their work and understand what they'd built for us. Hey there, how's it going? Thanks for joining me today. Whether you're relaxing at home, on your commute, or winding down for the evening, I'm really glad you're here. Today we're going treasure hunting, but not for gold or silver. We're looking for something far more valuable, proof that the builders left calling cards scattered across our planet. Evidence hidden in plain sight that most people walk past every day without realizing they're looking at messages from Earth's architects. Before we continue this journey, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story resonates with you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extraordinary for you. Picture this. You're an advanced civilization that has just spent countless eons building the most sophisticated machine in the known universe. You're about to leave, but you want the eventual inhabitants to understand what they've inherited. How do you leave messages that will survive millions of years and eventually be discovered by being smart enough to appreciate them? You encode them in stone. You embed them in the very fabric of the world you've created. And you make them so obvious that once people develop the right level of technology and understanding, they'll be impossible to ignore. That's exactly what the builders did. And the evidence is staggering. Let's start with something that'll blow your mind. The stone spheres of Costa Rica. Deep in the jungles and river deltas of this Central American country, archaeologists have discovered over 300 perfectly spherical stones. Not roughly spherical, not close to spherical, perfectly spherical. Some of these spheres are tiny, just a few inches across. Others are massive. We're talking about granite spheres weighing 16 tons, standing 8 feet tall. When researchers measured them with precision instruments, they found something that shouldn't be possible. These spheres are accurate to within plus or minus 2 millimeters. That's precision that rivals modern machine tools. Now here's what makes this even more incredible. Granite is one of the hardest materials on Earth. It's composed of quartz, feldspar, and mica crystals that make it extremely difficult to work with, even using modern diamond-tipped tools. Yet someone created these perfect spheres, using techniques that archaeologists can't explain. I've seen attempts by modern stone carvers to recreate just one small sphere using every tool available today. After months of work, they couldn't achieve even close to the precision of the originals. Yet in Costa Rica, hundreds of these impossibly perfect spheres sit arranged in precise geometric patterns across the landscape. But Costa Rica is just the beginning. Let's travel to Egypt, to the Giza Plateau, where the evidence gets even more mind-bending. Most people think the Great Pyramid is just an impressive ancient tomb, but when you examine it with modern measurement tools, you discover it's actually a massive mathematical statement carved in stone. The numbers are so precise they can't be coincidental. The base perimeter of the Great Pyramid, when divided by twice its height, equals pi to 15 decimal places. Pi, that fundamental mathematical constant that appears throughout nature and advanced physics. The ancient Egyptians supposedly didn't even have a concept of pi as a mathematical constant, yet they encoded it into their greatest monument with stunning precision. But that's just the start. The pyramid's base is oriented to true north with an accuracy of 3/60ths of a degree. That's more precise than the Greenwich Observatory in London was when it was first built. The sides of the base are equal to within just 2 centimeters, across a distance of more than 230 meters. That's construction precision that would challenge modern builders using laser guidance systems. Here's where it gets really wild. The entire Giza complex aligns with the constellation Orion, as it appeared exactly 12,500 years ago. Not approximately, exactly. The 3 pyramids match the position of Orion's belt stars with mathematical precision, including the slight offset of the smallest pyramid that corresponds to the dimmer star Mintaka. Think about what this means. Whoever built Giza encoded not just advanced mathematics, but also precise astronomical knowledge spanning thousands of years. They understood the precession of the equinoxes, the 26,000-year cycle of Earth's axial wobble, and used it to timestamp their construction with incredible accuracy. But the builders weren't content to leave messages just in human monuments. They embedded signatures directly into the geological structure of our planet, creating formations that appear natural but follow patterns too precise to be accidental. Take the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland. 40,000 hexagonal basalt columns rise from the sea in perfect geometric formation. Each column is a 6-sided prism with angles of exactly 120 degrees. The columns fit together with mathematical precision, creating a structure that looks like it was designed by an architect rather than formed by natural processes. Geologists explain this formation by saying that cooling lava naturally forms hexagonal columns due to thermal contraction, and that's true to a point. But the precision at Giant's Causeway goes far beyond what thermal physics would predict. The columns are too uniform, too perfectly sized, too geometrically exact. It's as if natural processes were guided to create this monument to mathematical perfection. The same pattern appears at Devil's Postpile in California, at Fingal's Cave in Scotland, and dozens of other locations worldwide. Always hexagonal, always precise, always displaying mathematical properties that stretch the boundaries of what we consider naturally possible. But the geological signatures go deeper than surface formations. The builders encoded patterns into the very structure of our continents. When you reassemble the continents into their ancient configuration of Pangaea, something remarkable emerges. The overall shape approximates the golden ratio, that divine proportion that appears throughout nature and art. The golden ratio, approximately 1.618 to 1, shows up in spiral galaxies, nautilus shells, flower petals, and countless other natural forms. It's considered one of the most beautiful and fundamental proportions in mathematics. The fact that our continental arrangement reflects this ratio suggests the builders were working from a master geometric plan. Ocean trenches follow mathematical curves that mirror solutions to complex differential equations. Mountain ranges encode Fibonacci sequences in their peak arrangements. Even the distribution of major rivers across continents follows patterns that look suspiciously like planned irrigation systems rather than random erosion. Recent discoveries have revealed even more stunning evidence. In Gabon, Africa, scientists discovered 17 natural nuclear reactors that operated 2 billion years ago. These weren't random uranium deposits. They were configured in ways that maintained sustained nuclear reactions for hundreds of thousands of years. The precision required to achieve this naturally is so unlikely that many researchers now suspect intelligent design. The reactors operated with a precision that rivals modern nuclear technology. They maintained optimal neutron flux, prevented meltdowns, and even included natural cooling systems. Water moderated the reactions during the day when temperatures rose, and the reactions slowed at night when temperatures dropped. It's exactly how you would design a nuclear power system if you wanted it to run safely for geological periods. But here's what really got my attention. Recent seismic studies have revealed that Earth's inner core has its own inner core. We're looking at nested spheres within spheres, like Russian dolls. The innermost core rotates at a different rate than the middle core, which rotates differently than the outer core. This creates a complex magnetic dynamo system, far more sophisticated than anything we previously imagined. This nested structure maintains our magnetic field with suspicious efficiency. Computer models show that simpler core configurations would work, but they wouldn't be nearly as stable over billions of years. The builders designed a system with multiple redundancies and feedback loops that ensure continuous magnetic protection no matter what external forces Earth encounters. The more we dig, literally and figuratively, the more evidence we find. Crystalline formations in caves display geometric perfection that defies explanation. Mineral deposits follow distribution patterns that look suspiciously like planned resource allocation. Even the spacing of volcanic hotspots around the globe follows mathematical sequences that suggest underlying organization. Take the Hawaiian island chain. As the Pacific plate moves over a stationary hotspot in the mantle, it creates a chain of volcanic islands. The spacing between these islands follows a precise mathematical progression that correlates with the golden ratio. Coincidence? When you see the same mathematical constants appearing repeatedly across unrelated geological phenomena, coincidence becomes increasingly unlikely. The builders left their fingerprints in the molecular structure of common minerals. Quartz crystals form in hexagonal patterns with angles that encode mathematical constants. Water molecules arrange themselves in ice crystals that display the same geometric principles found in the most sophisticated modern architectural designs. Even the spiral structure of galaxies mirrors patterns found in everything from seashells to the arrangement of seeds in sunflowers. But perhaps the most compelling evidence lies in what scientists call fine-tuning, the observation that fundamental physical constants appear precisely calibrated for life. The strength of the electromagnetic force, the mass of protons and electrons, the rate of expansion of the universe, all of these seem impossibly well adjusted to allow complex structures to form. Change any of these constants by even tiny amounts, and stars couldn't form, atoms couldn't bond, or nuclear reactions couldn't occur. The probability of all these values falling into life-permitting ranges by chance is estimated at less than 1 in 10 to the power of 120. Yet, here they are, perfectly calibrated, creating a universe where matter can organize itself into increasing complexity, eventually leading to consciousness that can recognize and appreciate the very systems that created it. The builders didn't just construct Earth, they fine-tuned the local physics to ensure their creation would work exactly as intended. They left evidence of this calibration scattered across our planet in forms ranging from ancient monuments to geological structures to the very atoms that make up our bodies. When I step back and look at all this evidence together, one thing becomes crystal clear. The builders wanted us to figure this out. They created a trail of breadcrumbs that becomes more obvious as our technology and understanding advance. They knew that eventually their creation would develop enough intelligence to recognize the signatures they left behind. These aren't random anomalies or coincidences. They're calling cards, proof of authorship, messages saying, "We were here and we built this for you." But why leave these messages? What did they want us to understand? Tomorrow, we'll explore the most mind-blowing discovery of all, how perfectly calibrated every system on Earth is for complex life. We'll dive into the precision of our atmosphere, the genius of our carbon cycle, and the impossible perfection of water itself. You'll discover that Earth isn't just suitable for life, It's been optimized for life in ways that boggle the mind. The builders weren't just constructing a planet. They were calibrating paradise itself, creating conditions so perfect for consciousness that the odds against it happening naturally are essentially zero. And once you understand just how precise these calibrations are, you'll realize we're not just living on a planet, we're living inside the most sophisticated life support system ever devised. Hey there, how's it going? Thanks for joining me today. Whether you're relaxing at home, on your commute, or winding down for the evening, I'm really glad you're here. Today, I want to take you inside the most sophisticated life support system ever created. We're going to explore how the builders calibrated every single parameter on Earth with such precision that even tiny variations would make complex life impossible. When you understand these numbers, you'll realize we're not just living on a suitable planet. We're living inside a carefully tuned paradise. Before we continue this journey, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story resonates with you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extraordinary for you. Let's start with the air you're breathing right now. Most people never think about atmospheric composition. Air is just air, right? But when you examine the precise mixture of gases surrounding our planet, you discover engineering so sophisticated it takes your breath away. Our atmosphere contains exactly 21% oxygen. Not 20%, not 22%, but 21%. This number isn't arbitrary. It represents the narrow sweet spot where complex life can flourish without burning up. Here's why this precision matters. At 19% oxygen, fire becomes nearly impossible to sustain. You couldn't light a match reliably, couldn't maintain a campfire, couldn't develop metallurgy or cooking, all the technologies that allowed human civilization to advance. At 25% oxygen, everything becomes explosive. A single lightning strike would ignite entire forests into unstoppable infernos. Organic materials would be so flammable that complex ecosystems couldn't survive. The builders found that razor-thin margin between too little for technology and too much for survival and locked our atmosphere at exactly the right concentration. And here's the incredible part. This concentration has remained stable for hundreds of millions of years, despite constant production and consumption by living organisms. Think about that. Plants produce oxygen through photosynthesis. Animals consume oxygen through respiration. Fires burn oxygen. Rocks oxidize and consume oxygen. With all these competing processes, atmospheric oxygen should fluctuate wildly. Instead, it maintains steady-state equilibrium with precision that would make Swiss watchmakers jealous. The builders programmed self-regulating mechanisms we're only beginning to understand. When oxygen levels rise, increased fire activity burns off excess vegetation, reducing oxygen production. When levels drop, reduced fire activity allows more plants to grow and produce oxygen. It's an automated feedback system that has maintained perfect balance for eons. Nitrogen makes up 78% of our atmosphere, and this isn't random either. Nitrogen serves as a buffer gas, diluting oxygen to safe levels while remaining chemically inert under normal conditions. Too little nitrogen, and oxygen concentration would be dangerously high. Too much, and there wouldn't be enough oxygen for complex metabolism. But nitrogen does something else crucial. It provides a reservoir for biological nitrogen fixation. Certain bacteria can convert atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia, which plants use to build proteins and DNA. Without this nitrogen cycle, life would be limited to simple forms that couldn't construct complex molecules. The trace amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, currently about 400 parts per million, is calibrated with similar precision. This tiny fraction creates just enough greenhouse warming to keep Earth from freezing solid, while not being so concentrated that it creates runaway heating like Venus. The builders designed multiple feedback mechanisms to maintain this balance automatically. When CO2 levels rise, more carbonic acid forms in rainwater. This weak acid weathers rocks faster, consuming CO2 in chemical reactions. When CO2 levels drop, reduced weathering allows volcanic emissions to gradually increase atmospheric concentration. It's a planetary thermostat that has maintained Earth's temperature within habitable ranges for billions of years, automatically adjusting to changing conditions. But let's talk about water. This is where the engineering gets truly mind-blowing. Water covers exactly 71% of Earth's surface, and this precise coverage is essential for climate regulation. Too much water coverage, and there would be no land for terrestrial evolution. Too little, and oceans couldn't effectively moderate global temperatures or provide enough evaporation for the water cycle. The builders calculated exactly how much water was needed for optimal planetary function and placed it accordingly. But here's what really convinced me: this is all artificial. Water itself has properties that shouldn't exist in nature. Water is one of only a few substances that expands when it freezes. This sounds like a minor detail, but it's absolutely critical for life. Because ice is less dense than liquid water, it floats. This means bodies of water freeze from the top down, creating an insulating layer that protects aquatic life below. If ice were denser than water, like every other substance on Earth, bodies of water would freeze solid from bottom to top, killing all aquatic life during cold periods. The builders didn't just place water on Earth. They engineered the molecular properties of water itself to be perfect for life. Water has the highest specific heat capacity of any common substance except ammonia. This means it resists temperature changes more than almost anything else. When you heat water, it absorbs enormous amounts of energy before its temperature rises. When you cool it, it releases that energy slowly. This makes water perfect for biological systems and climate regulation. Oceans act like massive thermal batteries, storing heat during warm periods and releasing it during cold periods, moderating global temperatures. Water is also an almost universal solvent, dissolving more substances than any other liquid. This makes it ideal for biological chemistry, allowing nutrients to be transported throughout living organisms and enabling the complex chemical reactions that life depends on. The builders engineered water's molecular structure, the angle between hydrogen atoms, the partial electrical charges, the hydrogen bonding properties, to create the perfect medium for life. Change any of these molecular characteristics even slightly, and water loses its life-supporting properties. Now let's examine the carbon cycle. This system is so elegant, it's almost artistic. Carbon dioxide from the atmosphere dissolves in rainwater, forming weak carbonic acid. This acid weathers rocks, releasing minerals that wash into oceans. Marine organisms use these minerals to build shells and skeletons. When these organisms die, their remains settle to the ocean floor, eventually forming limestone that locks away carbon for millions of years. But here's the genius part. Plate tectonics eventually recycles this limestone through volcanic activity, releasing carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere to complete the cycle. The entire system maintains Earth's temperature within livable bounds over geological timescales. One broken link anywhere in this chain, and the system fails catastrophically. Too much weathering, and CO2 levels drop so low that Earth freezes into a snowball. Too little weathering, and CO2 accumulates until Earth becomes a greenhouse like Venus. The builders calibrated every step to maintain perfect balance. The precision extends to trace elements essential for life. Calcium levels in seawater are exactly right for marine organisms to build shells and bones. Iron concentrations support photosynthesis and oxygen transport in blood. Phosphorus availability allows DNA and cell membrane formation. Dozens of elements exist in precisely the concentrations needed for complex biochemistry. Change any of these concentrations significantly, and life as we know it becomes impossible. Yet they've remained stable for billions of years through processes that appear automatic but required incredible foresight to design. The builders even calibrated Earth's relationship with space. Our planet sits in what astronomers call the habitable zone, the narrow band around our star where liquid water can exist. Move Earth just 5% closer to the sun, and runaway greenhouse heating would boil away our oceans. Move us 5% farther out, and we'd freeze solid like Mars. But it's not just distance, it's timing. Our sun is what astronomers call a main sequence star, meaning it burns hydrogen steadily for billions of years without dramatic changes in energy output. Most stars are either too massive and burn out quickly, or too small and don't provide enough energy for complex life. The builders chose a star with exactly the right mass to provide stable energy for the billions of years needed for life to evolve from simple to complex forms. They positioned Earth at exactly the right distance to receive optimal energy. They gave us exactly the right atmospheric composition to regulate temperature within narrow bounds. Our magnetic field strength is calibrated perfectly. Too weak, and cosmic radiation would sterilize the surface. Too strong, and it would interfere with the chemical processes of life. The field strength varies around the planet in patterns that protect populated areas, while allowing atmospheric dynamics that drive weather and climate. Even our planet's rotation rate is optimized. 24-hour days create ideal temperature cycles, long enough for complex weather patterns to develop, short enough to prevent extreme temperature swings between day and night. Faster rotation would create destructive winds. Slower rotation would create temperature extremes that would make most of the planet uninhabitable. The axial tilt of 23.5 degrees gives us seasons that drive atmospheric circulation and ocean currents without creating extreme climate variations. This tilt, stabilized by our impossibly large moon, has remained constant for billions of years, providing the climate stability that allowed complex ecosystems to develop. When you step back and look at all these systems working together, you realize you're looking at the most sophisticated piece of technology ever created. Every parameter is precisely calibrated. Every system has multiple redundancies and feedback mechanisms. Every process is optimized for maintaining conditions where consciousness can emerge and flourish. The probability of all these factors aligning naturally is so small, it's essentially impossible. The electromagnetic force strength, the nuclear binding energies, the ratio of electron to proton mass, the expansion rate of the universe, all perfectly tuned for complexity to emerge. Change any fundamental constant by even tiny amounts, and stars couldn't form, atoms couldn't bond, or chemistry couldn't occur, yet here we are, surrounded by systems so perfectly calibrated for life that every breath you take, every drop of water you drink, every stable climate pattern that makes civilization possible represents engineering precision that surpasses our wildest technological dreams. The builders didn't just construct a planet suitable, and for life, they optimized every possible parameter to create paradise itself. They built a world where consciousness could emerge naturally from increasingly complex systems, where intelligence could eventually understand and appreciate the very mechanisms keeping it alive. But here's what keeps me awake at night. Why did they build it? What was the purpose of creating this perfect environment for consciousness? Tomorrow, we'll explore how humanity began to notice these impossible perfections and started asking the questions that would change everything. We'll discover how modern science, initially trying to prove Earth formed naturally, instead uncovered evidence that shook the scientific community to its core. The builders left us a world calibrated for paradise, but they also left us a mystery. Why create conscious beings capable of understanding their own cosmic circumstances? What did they expect us to do with this knowledge? The answers will surprise you. Hey there, how's it going? Thanks for joining me today. Whether you're relaxing at home, on your commute, or winding down for the evening, I'm really glad you're here. For 99,000 years after Earth's construction was complete, everything operated according to plan. The systems hummed along automatically, maintaining perfect conditions while life evolved exactly as designed. But then something remarkable happened, something the builders had been waiting for all along. humanity began to notice. Before we continue this journey, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story resonates with you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extraordinary for you. The awakening didn't happen overnight. It began with whispers, with stories passed down through generations, with ancient texts that described visitors from the sky who shaped our world before departing. Every civilization on Earth preserves memories of these builders, these creators, these architects who established everything before disappearing into the cosmos. The Sumerian texts, dating back 6,000 years, tell us about the Anunnaki, literally translated as those who from heaven came to Earth. These weren't primitive creation myths, they were detailed accounts of beings who allegedly created our world and our species. The Sumerians described these visitors with technological capabilities that sound remarkably like advanced engineering. They could fly through the heavens, manipulate matter at will, and create life itself. But Sumerians weren't alone in preserving these memories. Sanskrit Vedas from ancient India speak of vimanas, flying vehicles of the gods who shaped reality according to divine mathematics. These texts describe beings who could manipulate the fundamental forces of nature, who built worlds and established the cosmic order that governs everything we see. Aboriginal Australian Dreamtime stories, maintained through 40,000 years of unbroken oral tradition, describe sky beings who sang the world into existence. Not metaphorically, they describe actual sound frequencies that organized matter and energy into the patterns we call reality. When you understand that modern physics has discovered sound waves can indeed organize matter into complex structures, these ancient accounts start sounding less like mythology and more like technical manuals. Native American creation stories across dozens of tribes tell remarkably similar accounts of people who prepared Earth for human habitation, then retreated to the heavens with promises to return when humanity was ready to understand what had been built for them. Polynesian navigation legends speak of divine navigators who established the patterns of wind and current that allowed human exploration of the Pacific. Celtic myths describe the Tuatha De Danann, the divine tribe that shaped the landscape of Ireland before withdrawing to otherworldly realms. Every culture, on every continent, preserves memories of builders, creators, architects who established Earth before departing. The consistency of these accounts across isolated civilizations is stunning. These weren't cultures that had contact with each other, yet they all remembered the same basic story. Advanced beings came from the sky, built our world, established humanity, then left with promises to return for thousands of years. These stories were dismissed as primitive mythology. But then something happened that changed everything. We got our first look at Earth from outside. December 24th, 1968. Apollo 8 circles the moon, and astronaut William Anders snaps a photograph that would transform human consciousness forever. He calls it Earthrise, our blue marble planet rising over the stark lunar horizon like a brilliant jewel against the infinite black void of space. That image hit humanity like a thunderbolt. For the first time, we could see our entire world as a single integrated system. Against the barren, cratered wasteland of the moon and the hostile emptiness of space, Earth appeared impossible. Too perfect, too blue, too alive, too precisely calibrated for life in a universe that seemed designed to destroy it. NASA scientists began running calculations almost immediately. What were the odds that a planet could naturally develop all the conditions necessary for complex life? The results shook the scientific community to its core. Earth's collection of life-enabling features had a probability of natural occurrence estimated at less than 1 in 10 to the power of 15. That's a number so small it's effectively impossible. To put this in perspective, imagine filling the entire observable universe with grains of sand, then randomly selecting exactly one specific grain. That's roughly the probability we calculated for Earth forming naturally with all its life-supporting characteristics, the dominoes of discovery. began falling faster after Apollo 8. Scientists who had spent their careers assuming Earth formed through random processes suddenly found themselves confronting evidence that suggested otherwise. In 1977, a British scientist named James Lovelock proposed something that initially seemed ridiculous: the Gaia hypothesis. He suggested that Earth functions as a single, self-regulating organism. The planet maintains optimal conditions for life through complex feedback mechanisms that operate across biological, geological, and atmospheric systems. The scientific establishment initially dismissed Lovelock's ideas as mystical nonsense. But as evidence accumulated, the hypothesis became increasingly difficult to ignore. Ocean salinity has remained constant for billions of years, despite rivers continuously adding salt. Atmospheric composition maintains incredible stability despite volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and constant biological activity. Global temperature fluctuates, but always returns to baseline ranges that support complex life. Earth doesn't just support life, it actively maintains conditions that optimize life's development and survival. It behaves less like a random collection of rocks and gases and more like a programmed system, running sophisticated software designed to maintain perfect environmental parameters. By the 1980s, what started as individual observations had crystallized into an overwhelming pattern. Geologists discovered that plate tectonics operates with mechanical precision, recycling materials at exactly the rates needed for atmospheric regulation. Atmospheric scientists found that our air composition maintains stability that defies natural explanation. Oceanographers realized that ocean currents follow patterns so precisely calibrated that tiny variations would destabilize global climate. Astronomers made even more startling discoveries. Our moon's size and position were so perfectly calculated for Earth's needs that natural capture seemed impossible. Our solar system's configuration provided protection from asteroid impacts and cosmic radiation, while allowing just enough stellar energy for complex evolution. Even our galaxy's structure and our position within it appeared optimized for the development of technological civilization. The evidence kept mounting. Carbon isotope ratios in ancient rocks suggested that biological processes had been operating at optimal efficiency for billions of years, far longer than random evolution should have required to achieve such precision. The fossil record showed periods of rapid evolutionary advancement that coincided perfectly with environmental changes, as if life was adapting to pre-programmed planetary modifications. But perhaps the most convincing evidence came from studying what scientists call fine-tuning, the observation that fundamental physical constants appear precisely calibrated for complexity to exist. The electromagnetic force strength, the nuclear binding energies, the ratio of electron to proton mass, the expansion rate of the universe, all perfectly adjusted to allow stars to form, chemistry to occur, and consciousness to emerge. Change the electromagnetic force by just 4% and stars couldn't form. Alter nuclear binding energy by 0.5% and hydrogen couldn't fuse into heavier elements. Modify electron mass by a tiny fraction, and atoms couldn't bond into molecules. Adjust universal expansion rate slightly, and galaxies would either collapse immediately or expand too rapidly for matter to clump. Together, the probability of all these constants falling into life-permitting ranges by pure chance is estimated at less than 1 in 10 to the power of 120. That's a number so incomprehensibly small that mathematicians consider it effectively impossible. Yet here they all are, perfectly calibrated, creating a universe where matter can organize itself into increasing complexity, eventually leading to consciousness that can recognize and appreciate the very systems that created it. As I researched this story, I kept finding the same pattern repeated across every field of science. Initial assumptions about natural random processes kept colliding with evidence of design, purpose, and optimization. The more precisely scientists measured Earth's characteristics, the more impossible natural formation appeared. Geochemists found that mineral distributions across our planet follow patterns that suggest planned resource allocation rather than random geological processes. Climatologists discovered that weather systems operate with feedback mechanisms so sophisticated they resemble engineered control systems. Even evolutionary biologists began noting that genetic changes often appeared to anticipate environmental shifts, as if DNA itself was programmed with instructions for adapting to future conditions. The awakening accelerated through the 1990s and into the new millennium as computer modeling allowed scientists to test their theories with unprecedented precision. Every model that attempted to recreate Earth's formation through natural processes failed to produce conditions suitable for complex life. Every simulation that successfully generated Earth-like conditions required external intelligence guiding the process. Meanwhile, space exploration was revealing that habitable planets are incredibly rare. The Kepler Space Telescope discovered thousands of exoplanets, but none came close to matching Earth's precise combination of characteristics. Most planets are too hot, too cold, too large, too small, orbiting wrong types of stars, lacking protective magnetic fields, or missing the countless other requirements for complex life. The more we learned about other worlds, the more extraordinary our own planet appeared. Earth wasn't just suitable for life, it was optimized for life in ways that seemed to transcend natural possibility. But here's what really got my attention. The timing of humanity's awakening appears to be precisely calibrated as well. We're discovering Earth's artificial nature at exactly the moment when our planet's automatic systems are beginning to show strain. Climate patterns that have remained stable for millennia are shifting. Extinction rates are accelerating beyond natural background levels. Ocean chemistry is changing. Atmospheric composition is fluctuating. It's as if Earth's self-regulating mechanisms are reaching the limits of their programming. Just as humanity develops the technology and understanding to potentially take over their management, the correlation seems too perfect to be coincidental. The builders didn't just create a self-maintaining world, they created a world that would eventually graduate its caretakers from passengers to pilots. They programmed Earth to operate automatically during humanity's developmental phase, then begin requiring conscious management precisely when we'd become capable of providing it. We're living through the transition period right now. The training wheels are coming off. Earth's automatic systems are signaling that it's time for conscious beings to understand and actively maintain the mechanisms keeping our world habitable. Tomorrow, we'll explore why the builders went to all this trouble. What was their purpose in creating conscious beings capable of understanding their own cosmic circumstances? The answer will reshape how you think about humanity's role in the universe and reveal the incredible responsibility we've inherited as Earth's next caretakers. The builders left us more than just a perfect world. They left us a test. Are we ready to graduate from unconscious beneficiaries to conscious stewards of the most sophisticated life support system ever created? Hey there! How's it going? Thanks for joining me today. Whether you're relaxing at home, on your commute, or winding down for the evening, I'm really glad you're here. Today, we're going to answer the ultimate question: why? Why would advanced beings spend eons building the most sophisticated machine in the known universe? Why create a world perfectly calibrated for consciousness? Why design humans with the capacity to eventually understand their own cosmic circumstances? The answer will fundamentally change how you see your place in this vast cosmos. Before we continue this journey, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story resonates with you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extraordinary for you. As humanity has grappled with mounting evidence of our artificial origin, patterns have emerged that suggest a purpose so profound it takes your breath away. Earth wasn't just designed as a habitat, it was engineered as an incubator for consciousness itself. Every challenge we face, every resource we discover, Every environmental pressure that shapes our development appears carefully calibrated to push human evolution in a specific direction. Think about how perfectly our environment balances challenge and support. We live long enough to accumulate wisdom and pass it to future generations, but not so long that societies become stagnant and resistant to change. Our lifespans of roughly 80 years create natural generational turnover that allows new ideas to take root while preserving essential knowledge through culture and tradition. Resources exist in exactly the right abundance to drive civilization forward. We have enough accessible metals, fossil fuels and minerals to build complex technology, but they're scarce enough to require innovation, cooperation, and careful planning. Too abundant, and we'd have no incentive to develop efficiency or sustainability. Too scarce, and we'd never advance beyond subsistence survival. Natural challenges like weather, earthquakes, diseases, and seasonal changes create constant pressure for advancement without overwhelming us. These challenges force humans to develop tools, medicine, agriculture, and social cooperation, but they're survivable enough that civilization can accumulate progress over time. The builders even calibrated our planet's dangers perfectly. Asteroid impacts are frequent enough to drive evolutionary change, but rare enough that complex life can develop between events. Ice ages cycle with mathematical precision, creating environmental pressures that accelerate human development during crucial periods while providing stable, interglacial periods for civilization to flourish. But the most compelling evidence of purpose lies in human DNA itself. Our genetic code contains sections that appear artificially edited, sequences that activated suddenly during human evolution, granting us language, abstract thought, and technological capability, seemingly overnight in evolutionary terms. The transformation from pre-human ancestors to modern humans happened with suspicious speed. Archaeological evidence shows that humans acquired complex language, artistic expression, mathematical thinking, and technological innovation in what evolutionary biologists call the Great Leap Forward, a period lasting only a few thousand years, about 50,000 years ago. From an evolutionary perspective, this rapid development is nearly impossible to explain through natural selection alone. The genetic changes required for complex cognition should have taken hundreds of thousands of years to accumulate gradually. Instead, they appeared suddenly, as if someone had activated dormant programming already embedded in our DNA. Our brains provide even more compelling evidence of artificial design. Human consciousness consumes 20% of our body's energy, a massive metabolic cost that only makes sense if consciousness itself was the primary goal of our development. From a survival perspective, such energy-intensive cognition should have been selected against unless it provided overwhelming advantages. But here's what's remarkable. Human consciousness goes far beyond what's needed for survival. We're the only species that looks at stars and wonders about our place in the universe. We create art, music, and poetry that serves no survival function. We seek meaning beyond mere reproduction and resource acquisition. We can contemplate infinity, imagine scenarios that don't exist, and understand abstract mathematical concepts that have no direct survival value. This level of consciousness seems specifically designed for understanding and maintaining complex systems, exactly the kind of understanding needed to manage a planetary life support system. The timing of human development also appears precisely calibrated. We evolved complex consciousness just as Earth's automatic systems began approaching the limits of their programming. Climate patterns that remained stable for millions of years are now fluctuating. Ocean chemistry is changing. Atmospheric composition is shifting. Extinction rates are accelerating beyond natural background levels. These changes aren't random. They're warning signals that Earth's self-regulating mechanisms need conscious oversight. The planet is essentially saying, I've maintained optimal conditions for your development, but now I need help. Are you ready to take over some of my management functions? The correlation between human technological development and Earth's systemic stress seems too perfect to be coincidental. We're developing climate monitoring, atmospheric engineering, genetic modification, and ecological restoration capabilities precisely when Earth needs these interventions to maintain habitability. The revelation grows even more profound when you consider what this means for humanity's ultimate purpose. We might be Earth's consciousness, the planet's way of developing self-awareness and active management of its own systems. We're not separate from Earth. We're Earth becoming conscious of itself. This explains the strange sense of responsibility many people feel toward environmental protection. It's not just moral preference, it's recognition of our fundamental role as Earth's caretaking intelligence. We're literally the planet's nervous system, developing the capacity to monitor and maintain the very mechanisms that keep us all alive. The builders left breadcrumbs pointing toward this realization throughout human culture. Ancient texts consistently describe humanity as guardians, stewards, or caretakers of the natural world. Religious traditions across all cultures emphasize human responsibility for protecting and maintaining creation. Even secular environmental movements tap into this deep, intuitive understanding that we're meant to be active participants in planetary management, rather than passive consumers of resources. But the evidence goes deeper than cultural patterns. Modern neuroscience has discovered that human brains are uniquely wired for systems thinking, the ability to understand complex interactions between multiple variables operating on different timescales. This cognitive architecture is perfectly suited for comprehending and managing planetary-scale systems like climate, ocean circulation, atmospheric chemistry, and ecological networks. We're also the only species that can model future scenarios and plan interventions based on projected outcomes. This capacity for predictive thinking is exactly what's needed to maintain Earth systems proactively rather than simply reacting to crises after they develop. The builders programmed us with an irresistible drive to explore, understand, and organize our environment. Human curiosity isn't random. It's specifically directed toward understanding how systems work and how they can be improved. We automatically seek patterns, create models, and develop technologies that enhance our ability to monitor and control complex processes. Even our social organization appears designed for planetary management. Human cooperation can scale from small groups to global institutions, allowing coordination of activities across the entire planet. We naturally develop specialization, allowing different groups to focus on different aspects of planetary stewardship while sharing information and resources. Our technological development trajectory also seems purposeful. We've progressed from simple tools to global communication networks, satellite monitoring systems, genetic engineering, and climate modification technologies in a remarkably short time. This rapid advancement provides us with the tools needed for planetary management, just as Earth's automatic systems begin requiring conscious oversight. But perhaps the most convincing evidence lies in what happens when humans truly understand their role as Earth's consciousness. People who grasp this perspective report a fundamental shift in how they see themselves and their responsibilities. They describe feeling connected to natural systems in ways that go beyond intellectual understanding, as if they're remembering their true purpose. After a long period of amnesia, this awakening isn't just philosophical, it's practical. Humans who understand their role as planetary caretakers automatically begin making decisions that support long-term habitability rather than short-term personal advantage. They become more concerned with system health than individual accumulation. They start thinking in generations rather than quarters. The builders knew this would happen. They programmed us to recognize our purpose once we developed sufficient understanding of our circumstances. The realization that we're Earth's consciousness naturally leads to accepting responsibility for Earth's welfare. We're living through the transition period, right? Now, The moment when humanity graduates from unconscious passengers to unconscious pilots of the most sophisticated life support system ever created. Some humans have already made this transition and are actively working on planetary restoration and long-term sustainability. Others are still operating from older programming, focused on individual survival and resource accumulation. But the awakening is accelerating. As more people understand Earth's artificial nature and humanity's designed purpose, the collective shift toward planetary stewardship becomes inevitable. We're approaching the moment when humanity will consciously accept its role as Earth's maintenance crew and begin actively managing the systems, keeping our world habitable. The Builder's ultimate gift wasn't just a perfect world. It was the opportunity to become conscious participants in maintaining that perfection. They created us to be Earth's intelligence, Earth's consciousness, Earth's capacity for self-understanding and self-care. Tomorrow, we'll explore what this means practically. How do we read Earth's operating manual? What are the warning signs that systems need attention? How do we transition from automatic pilot to conscious management without destabilizing the very systems we're trying to protect? The Builders left us operating instructions encoded in the only language that transcends time, mathematics, physics, and the observable patterns of natural systems. Once you understand how to read these instructions, you'll see that Earth has been teaching us planetary management all along. Every natural process is a lesson in how to maintain complex systems sustainably. Hey there, how's it going? Thanks for joining me today. Whether you're relaxing at home, on your commute, or winding down for the evening, I'm really glad you're here. We've reached the final chapter of our incredible journey together. And today, I want to share something that could change the course of human history. The Builders didn't just leave us a perfect world, they left us operating instructions, a manual for planetary management hidden in the only language that transcends time, mathematics, physics, and the observable patterns of natural systems themselves. Before we continue this journey, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story resonates with you, make sure you're subscribed because the conversations we're having matter now more than ever. Picture yourself inheriting the most sophisticated machine ever built, but the previous owners had to leave before they could train you to operate it. How would they communicate essential maintenance procedures? They'd embed the instructions in the machine's own operations, making every function a teaching tool, every process a lesson in proper management. That's exactly what the Builders did with Earth. Every natural system demonstrates principles of sustainable management. Every ecological process shows us how to maintain complex systems without depleting resources or destabilizing essential functions. The water cycle teaches us about closed-loop systems where nothing is wasted. Forest ecosystems demonstrate how diversity creates stability. Ocean currents show us how to distribute energy efficiently across vast networks. The golden ratio appearing throughout nature, in nautilus shells, galaxy spirals, flower petals, and human DNA, tells us how to build sustainably. This mathematical constant, approximately 1.618 to 1, represents optimal efficiency in growth and resource utilization. Structures that follow the golden ratio use minimum materials while achieving maximum strength and beauty. When human architects and engineers apply golden ratio principles, they create buildings and systems that feel harmonious and function efficiently. The Builders embedded this instruction directly into Earth's biology, showing us the mathematical foundation for sustainable design. But we need to read these instructions quickly because time is running short. Earth's carefully calibrated systems are showing stress, fractures that suggest the automatic programming is reaching its limits. The great ocean conveyor belt, the massive circulation system that regulates global temperature by moving warm water toward the poles and cold water toward the equator, is wobbling dangerously. Measurements show this circulation has slowed by 15% since the 1950s. And climate models suggest it could collapse entirely within decades. If this system fails, Europe would experience ice age conditions while tropical regions overheat beyond habitability. Ocean ecosystems would collapse as nutrient distribution patterns change. Weather systems worldwide would destabilize, creating permanent drought in some regions and constant flooding in others. This isn't just climate change, it's a warning light on Earth's dashboard, signaling that the automatic temperature regulation system needs conscious oversight to continue functioning. Our magnetic field is weakening at an accelerating rate, dropping 10% in strength over the past century and 50 years. The magnetic North Pole is wandering toward Siberia at increasing speed, suggesting the magnetic dynamo system is becoming unstable. Some scientists believe we're approaching a magnetic pole reversal, an event that would temporarily expose Earth's surface to deadly cosmic radiation. The builders designed our magnetic field to be self-maintaining for billions of years, but even their sophisticated engineering has limits. The core systems may need conscious intervention to prevent magnetic collapse that would strip away our atmosphere and sterilize the surface. Extinction rates have accelerated to levels not seen since the asteroid impact that killed the dinosaurs. We're losing species at roughly 1,000 times the natural background rate, suggesting Earth's biodiversity management systems are overwhelmed. Ecosystems worldwide are showing signs of collapse as key species disappear and food webs unravel. The builders programmed Earth with incredible biodiversity precisely because diverse systems are more stable and resilient than simple ones. The current mass extinction threatens to simplify ecosystems below the threshold needed for stable operation, potentially triggering cascading failures across all of Earth's biological systems. Atmospheric composition is fluctuating beyond the narrow ranges that have remained stable for millions of years. Carbon dioxide levels are rising faster than natural buffering systems can compensate. Ocean acidity is increasing as excess CO2 dissolves in seawater, threatening marine ecosystems that form the foundation of global food webs. The builders designed multiple feedback mechanisms to maintain atmospheric stability, but these systems can be overwhelmed if changes occur too rapidly. We're approaching tipping points where automatic regulation fails and conscious management becomes essential for preventing runaway changes that would make Earth uninhabitable. These might all be warning lights on a dashboard we're just learning to read. Earth's sophisticated monitoring and control systems are sending signals that conscious intervention is needed to maintain habitability. The automatic pilot program is essentially saying, I've brought you this far, but now I need help. Are you ready to take the controls? The builders anticipated this moment, the transition from automatic operation to conscious management. They designed Earth to function independently during humanity's development phase, then begin requiring active stewardship precisely when we'd become capable of providing it. This explains why we're developing the necessary technologies right now. Satellite monitoring networks give us real-time data on atmospheric, oceanic, and geological systems worldwide. Genetic engineering allows us to restore extinct species and strengthen ecosystem resilience. Climate modification technologies enable us to regulate temperature and precipitation patterns. Renewable energy systems let us power civilization without destabilizing atmospheric chemistry. We're not just randomly developing these capabilities, we're following a curriculum the builders embedded in Earth's systems, learning planetary management through necessity and guided discovery. But we face a critical choice. Do we accept our inheritance as Earth's consciousness and begin actively maintaining the systems keeping us alive? Or do we remain unconscious passengers, hoping the automatic systems hold out indefinitely? The evidence suggests we don't have the luxury of remaining passive much longer. Earth's warning lights are flashing more frequently and more urgently. Climate systems are destabilizing. Magnetic field strength is declining. Ocean circulation is slowing. Extinction rates are accelerating. We're At the crossroads, the builders designed into human history the moment when we must choose between conscious stewardship and potential civilizational collapse. The encouraging news is that humans who understand their role as Earth's caretakers are already developing solutions. Renewable energy deployment is accelerating exponentially. Ecosystem restoration projects are succeeding worldwide. Carbon capture technologies are becoming economically viable. Sustainable agriculture is feeding growing populations while rebuilding soil health. These aren't just technological developments. They're signs that humanity is beginning to accept its designed purpose as planetary maintenance crew. We're learning to read Earth's operating manual and applying those lessons to maintain the systems our survival depends on. The builders left us more than instructions. They left us capabilities. Human consciousness is uniquely equipped for systems thinking, long-term planning, and coordinated global action. We can model complex interactions, predict future scenarios, and implement interventions based on projected outcomes. We're perfectly designed for the job we're inheriting, but the transition requires a fundamental shift in human perspective. We must move from seeing ourselves as separate from nature to understanding that we are nature becoming conscious of itself. We're not external managers of Earth's systems. We're Earth's internal capacity for self-awareness and self-maintenance. This shift is already happening. Environmental movements worldwide are recognizing that human welfare and planetary health are inseparable. Sustainable business practices are becoming economically advantageous. Political leaders are beginning to think in decades rather than election cycles. Young people especially are embracing their role as planetary stewards rather than just resource consumers. The builders knew this awakening would occur naturally once humans understood their circumstances. Consciousness that recognizes its dependence on planetary systems automatically begins protecting those systems. The realization that we are Earth's intelligence naturally leads to accepting responsibility for Earth's welfare. As our story reaches its climax, we find ourselves exactly where the builders intended, standing at the threshold of conscious planetary management, equipped with the tools and understanding needed to maintain the most sophisticated life support system ever created. The clues scattered across our world weren't just calling cards, proving the builders' existence. They were a training course, preparing us for this moment when we'd need to understand Earth deeply enough to become its active caretakers. Every ancient monument, every geological formation, every mathematical constant embedded in nature was teaching us the principles we'd need to maintain our world. Earth's story isn't finished. It's just beginning a new chapter. We're not just discovering our planet's artificial origins. We're being invited to become its next authors. The builders created the foundation, established the basic systems, and programmed the initial operating procedures. Now they're passing the torch to us, trusting that consciousness will choose to preserve the conditions that created it. The ultimate realization is both humbling and empowering. We're not separate from the most amazing creation in the known universe. We are that creation, becoming aware of itself. We're Earth, developing the capacity to understand and care for its own magnificence. The builders left us the greatest gift imaginable. Not just a perfect world to live in, but the opportunity to become conscious participants in maintaining that perfection for generations yet to come. Whether we accept this inheritance and rise to meet our cosmic responsibility will determine not just humanity's future, but the future of Earth itself. The machine is still running, still maintaining the miracle of a living world in a hostile universe. But it's time for us to step up from passengers to pilots, from beneficiaries to stewards, from unconscious consumers to conscious caretakers of the most beautiful and sophisticated system ever created. The builders did their part. Now it's our turn. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey of discovery. The story we've shared isn't just about Earth's past, it's about our future and the amazing responsibility we've inherited as conscious beings living in a consciously designed world. The question now is simple but profound. Are we ready to become the planetary caretakers we were designed to be? The answer to that question will determine everything